Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Existential Side Quests. I'm Jenna.
I'm Kimber.
And today we are going to be honoring something that's happening in the sky right now that happens a few times a year, and pop culture definitely gets its teeth in on it.
Yes.
Retrogrades. Yeah.
Yeah, we love retrogrades. I feel like we love blaming a lot on retrograde season, hyping them up, especially this one happening during the eclipse season as well, right?
Yeah. And it's interesting how much fear-mongering there is too around retrogrades planets. And it's like, but these happen all the time, and it's not just Mercury that can go retrograde. However, it is very convenient to blame any inconveniences or hiccups in communication on Mercury retrograde. Sometimes I'll have like a communication issue. This is like an admittance of something, but I'll have a communication issue and I'm like, Mercury must be retrograde. It's not. We're not even in the shadow. Like, what?
Right. And it's interesting too, because I feel like we give a lot, like we talk about Mercury retrograde a lot, but other planets also go retrograde, right, Jenna?
Yep, other planets do too. And the whole thing is they go retrograde because it's based on how we are viewing their movement in the sky.
Yes.
So it's kind of, go ahead.
No, I said yes. I was just,
Yeah.
yeah.
Kimber agrees. So little things like that, like, oh, did I overspeak you? Oh, I misheard you. That's all Mercury retrograde stuff, because it's really asking. Retrogrades in general are kind of like an intentional pause, whether we want to take it or not. It's like the energy is saying, with regards to this planet and the psychological or behavioral implications of what this planet has to do with, we're asking you to slow down. So Mercury having to do with communication, it's almost like slow your roll, make sure you're saying the right thing, make sure you're being heard the right way, make sure your perception and their perception actually line up. You can't take that for granted. And the reason that we say planets go retrograde, but really no planet's actually moving backwards through the sky, is that it's based on our perception from here on Earth. One of the analogies that we heard at forest school was when you're driving on the highway in a car and you're both going on the same road and you're going, to the same destination, and your car starts to speed up a little bit faster than the car you're passing. It looks to you as if that car is going in reverse, but in actuality, it is not going in reverse. So from here we sit on planet Earth, as we look at Mercury in the sky, it looks like Mercury is moving backwards through Pisces right now, but it's not. We are just moving forward at such a angular, faster rate that it seems as though it's moving backwards.
Right.
Yeah. And I was thinking too, should I say the perception thing?
Yes.
So we talk a lot about how Mercury can go retrograde in our culture, but we don't talk about Mars retrogrades or Pluto retrogrades or any of these other planets nearly as often. And perhaps that's because retrogrades are based on a perception, based on perceived speed, perceived direction. And Mercury as a planet is about perception. It's about other things in general, other things in addition, but communication, perception, perceived experiences, all of that. So maybe the doubling up on that perception energy makes it so that Mercury comes through and makes its way even into pop culture. Like, oh, Mercury's retrograding right now. We all know what that means. Ha ha ha.
Yeah. And we're also, because there are retrograde periods with all the different planets, some people are born during these retrograde periods. And so while we do want to talk about Mercury retrograde and retrograde transits, we also want to kind of look at our natal chart. So I'm really interested if anyone in the chat has a retrograde planet natally. So when we get to that point, we can kind of go into what does that mean for you, and maybe these retrograde seasons feel differently for you. Something you were saying, Jenna, makes me think I've seen someone try to kind of simplify how to think about retrogrades with so just putting the prefix re in front. So it's like reflect, rewind, repeat, reconsider, readjust. And that makes sense to me. But it's also, I think, maybe I'm going on a limb, but when you were talking about like the perception of Mercury retrograde, it made me think about our conversation about planets in detriment or in fall. And is this like a temporary in fall or detriment experience where we're using the planet's function, it's expressing in a different way? Or it's like if we're usually outwardly communicating. Now is a time to be more introspective, or, you know, if someone's not receiving the message, we have to figure out a different way to kind of get our message across. And I was like, oh, it's like we're being creative. If we like to kind of work with that retrograde season, we're hopefully going to be more creative in how we work with it.
I really like that. I like that a lot. I've never heard that before. Thank you for bringing that to the
Yeah.
show.
That just came out again.
Oh, wow.
That was brand new. Like literally when you were talking about the, like, what were you saying? You were talking about the perception and like things feeling confusing. It's like because of how it appears in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
And then that just literally made me think of like the conversation about planets in fall. So I was
that
like,
is so good. Because like when we were talking about planets in detriment and planets in fall, and even when Ricky weighs in on his Jupiter and Gemini and he talks about how it just takes him more time to get that Jupiter where it's going. That's literally what we're talking about. The pause, that retrograde, it takes more time. It intentionally slows you down. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like when we talked about planets in fall, it's where, you know, it's not necessarily that they are weak, it's that they're perceived as weak by the other planets, and so, or the other guests in this home. And so it's just, I was like, okay, I'm interested. Do we want to talk a little bit about like the speed and maybe stationing a little bit based off what Camille said?
Yeah, that's a great point. Camille, thanks for being here. Camille said that she's never heard this take about speed and perceptions within retrogrades. So as we're, observing a planet in the sky and it's kind of chugging along, and, we could talk about like astronomically based versus astrologically based movement, but we'll just simplify it for now. And as the perceived speed of the planet, it starts to slow down in the sky, and right before that instant where from where we see it, it looks as though it stops just for a moment and moves backwards. The speed, we're slowing to that stop, and then at that brief moment, it's called the station. However, we do give a little bit of wiggle room with that. Like most people say, like, oh, the day that Mercury stationed rather than the exact second. Yeah. One thing I like with retrogrades is this is like a visual that I've always kind of used, that stations are so significant. And it's because if you're kind of like tracking the speed of a planet as if you're highlighting something or as if you're dragging a marker across a piece of paper, as you drag it across, you're like, okay, I'm making a line. As you slow down, the marker's ink starts to bleed out and actually make more of a line. And when you station and you hold that marker in one place, it bleeds out onto the paper. And that, to me, that visually or it intellectualizes what that station, the emphasis of the fact it's bleeding out. You can't help but notice, ooh, that marker really made a giant impression at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like almost like a punctuation point. It's just sometimes like that can feel very strong, and I feel like we don't talk about that stationing period.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because when we talk about stations aspecting some of our planets, I know Steve at least says this, that sometimes the stations that are nearest to the exactitude hits of certain transits are more potent than when the planet actually crosses an exactitude. So for instance, Pluto in the sky right now is exactly square my natal Pluto. However, the station in May of 2025, I can tell you exactly the moment that it completely embraced. Wow, this is a Pluto square moment. This is very impactful. This is a pivotal time of change. However, right now in this moment, it doesn't feel quite as significant, even though I'm at a point of exactitude.
Right.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. I know I want to stick on Mercury retrograde a little bit more, but first I just want to add, because of these retrograde periods, that's why we get some transiting planets that will hit a certain part of our chart more than once, right? And so that's what makes some periods, especially with the slower moving planets, where you're like, oh, this Pluto's been on my Venus for 2 years, and it's because of that retrograde. And sometimes because of retrograde, it can hit not just 3 times, it could hit up to 5, like the same exact point, depending on if it just happens to go into retrograde around a sensitive point of your chart.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And it's also interesting to reflect back on the retrograde passes versus the direct hit passes, because direct hits tend to be more outwardly performed or more behaviorally experienced. Like, to have the direct hit of Mercury hitting something, it's like, oh, I went and I had a conversation. Oh, I heard this news, or I delivered this news. These are all very active, very out in the world type expressions. Whereas the retrograde hits, they tend to be more of an internal experience. I reflected on that conversation that I had, and I actually found a different meaning or a different way that I want to approach this, something like that.
Yeah, it's interesting when you say that, because I feel like I get a lot of dreams that seem very potent but random during Mercury retrograde, and that goes with that perception, but it's within. And so sometimes people are like, nothing's happening during a retrograde, but that's not necessarily true. There can be a lot going on under the surface.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. It's interesting too, because I natally have Mercury retrograde, and I have found that Mercury retrograde periods are actually easier for me than Mercury direct as far as decision making or seeing clarity in situations. I almost don't even have to even think about it, like, oh, let me revisit this. The epiphany or the clarity just kind of comes because the energy in the sky is matching the energy of my constitution. And when you get that kind of click into place, things just flow easier.
Yeah. That's really interesting, because I like that you're saying something positive about retrograde, because I feel like we blame a lot on the retrograde, or we're like, oh no, it's the villain or something bad's going to happen, but it's not necessarily bad. I do not have a natal retrograde Mercury, but I think in times when Mercury's in retrograde, I have a lot more patience if I don't understand something, or I'm more open to misunderstandings, and I'm like, oh, I'm kind of like just porous to if clarity needs to come in. It maybe things feel confusing, but maybe I'm not looking at it at the right angle. But since getting really into astrology and kind of embracing retrograde season as not going backwards or being stuck, but just a new angle, kind of allows me to work with the energy better.
Yeah, I like that. I like that the permission that being intellectually locked into what's going on, the permission it gives you, oh, it is Mercury retrograde season. So it is the time to actually reflect on this. Sometimes we walk through, especially in our society, our culture, we walk through life with a sense of urgency. Now, go, go, go. Like, be productive, be this, do the consuming, do the creating.
Yeah.
Whereas Mercury retrograde is like, actually, no, like, now we're reflecting, or all those words, rethinking,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. I liked what you said earlier too, about, different ways to understand this energy. What do you think about, how we talk about the horizon in the chart, and when you have a lot of planets above the horizon, you're either like very extroverted, or you process things externally. And if you have a lot below the horizon, you're more internal, or else you process things kind of internally, or you're an introvert. What do you think about retrogrades as almost a time to push things into that under the surface? So maybe even if you have a Mercury direct, if it's under the horizon, you can feel the energy a little easier.
You can, so let me make sure I'm understanding. Also, I was telling Jenna before we started that I feel like I have one brain cell, which is very in theme for Mercury retrograde. So you're saying if it's under the horizon that the retrograde's happening, perhaps we might feel the energy more personally, or?
Ooh, I like that too, because I wasn't going.
You were saying, so say it. What were you saying?
It's almost like, so say right now Mercury is in Pisces, and somebody pretend they have Pisces in the top half of their chart, and now it's retrograding in Pisces. So it's almost as if it's like saying, like, yeah, I'm up here in the top of your chart, but it's as if I'm underneath. It's like as if it's pulling it underneath instead of having this more. Yeah.
So like if you haven't, okay. I mean, it's a theory. I feel like it could work. It's hard for me to think about, because my Mercury's under the surface, and so I'm looking at when we've had these retrogrades, they typically have been recently, the ones that have felt most potent have been under the surface.
So it didn't actually have to
There's
flip.
no pull, right?
Yeah, it's already there. It's like,
Yeah,
all
but
right.
I do have a direct Mercury, so
Yeah, it's tricky.
it is. I'm
Just
sorry I couldn't
the
add more to that.
I know. As we do these shows, sometimes just like little inspirations come to us, and we don't really
Yeah.
have anywhere to go with it. Jill said that sorry for the late check-in, and she started a new job today. That's
Yay!
that's super exciting. Congratulations. It's interesting to jam on starting new things during a Mercury retrograde, though. Like good job, Jill, not being scared of the Mercury retrograde. Yes.
Well,
However,
that's what I think too. It's like life goes on during retrograde seasons. You can't just like, I remember people be like, oh, I can't sign this contract. And it's like, you can maybe reread it a couple of times, make sure you're reading the fine print or take some time to think about it. But sometimes you have to, or it's like, oh, don't travel because, Mercury has to do with travel or connection. And so, and like, no, maybe I have had every time I travel during a Mercury retrograde, I do get a delay or there's like a cancellation because of some storm. But more, I'm like just prepared for that to potentially happen. I might have a longer layover when I'm doing it. So it's like life still happens. We don't hold our trip. I don't think you can't just pause life because there's a retrograde happening.
exactly. Like that's something to really, as much as we talk about like don't don't judge people based on their zodiacs. Oh, like Jenna's a Leo, she's so dramatic, she's such a brat, she's a drama queen. It's like as much as we don't want to demonize any of the signs for their lower archetypes or for their stereotypes, we also don't want to demonize experiences such as retrogrades because there is a reason for them. There is some, potent divine energy in them that is unique to that retrograde period.
And that's interesting too, because I'm thinking back to over the summer when Mercury was in retrograde and I was visiting my best friend and like in my where I used to live. And so there's also sometimes you'll see that synchronicity where it's like you might have people who you haven't talked to in a while who reach out, or you're like kind of getting called back to something, specifically with Venus retrograde. And I have a really strong Venus. So I feel Venus retrograde a lot stronger. Plus, it doesn't happen as often as Mercury retrograde. But I ended up buying like something. I was like buying a lot of like secondhand clothes and like really cool dresses, which is like so vintage shopping, like that recycle of fashion and Venus does connect. And so I was like, oh, like there's just like cool things you can kind of see with those retrograde periods. Like, and I would definitely be interested if someone's tracking, comparing different Mercury retrogrades of what keeps coming up, because I noticed a trend with when Saturn is retrograde and then turns direct, that I have this same thought about something I want to do with my life. And I'll share with you all, but it's like something I've always wanted to be a foster parent at one point. And I noticed that Saturn is retrograde and it's retrograde for a while. And then within 3 weeks of it turning direct, I say that again. I'll say, I really want to make sure I'm working towards that. My natal Saturn is in the 4th house of family. And so it's really, and in Aquarius, which is kind of connected to that 11th house. And so really curious if people see any connection to where is your natal Mercury, and does that kind of tie in with what comes up with Mercury retrograde themes, even if it's going on in a different house?
Yeah, that's such a good question. Because for me, I definitely like my Mercury is in Cancer, and we would push it into the 5th, although I do see those themes in the 4th as well. And yeah, most Mercury retrogrades definitely pull in that natal information. Honey is calling out the elephant in the room. Oh, a whole war just started during this retrograde. Yes, a whole war did just start during this retrograde.
And I've been seeing some people are kind of calling the war as manufactured, or like a distraction or a like smoke and mirror situation to other things that are happening, which does kind of connect to that Pisces energy, if I'm being honest.
And it does kind of connect to the whole our exes coming up to the surface and reconnecting with old flings or old relationships in general. It doesn't have to be romantic. That we said goodbye to them for a reason. We are rethinking them and seeing them through this lens that's a little bit convoluted. So it's almost like we went to war during this time. We've definitely been involved in wars in the Middle East as a nation before. Like, why are we redoing this? What is the motivation? How is this actually going to be any different?
And I really like that you were talking about that, and that Honeybee brought up this war, because this is also happening as Neptune and Saturn are entering Aries. And so retrogrades do not happen in a vacuum. And so we have, this does feel like very much connected to this retrograde, and Aries is the sign of war. We have Neptune and Saturn there. And so really thinking about how all the planets are talking with each other, and that's where we get some ideas of what kind of energy is coming up.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's interesting to think of too that the Neptune Saturn conjunction in Aries, and then Mercury in Pisces, like they're about 10 degrees apart from each other. The midpoint of those energies that we were just talking about is around 27 degrees, which is sextile to Uranus. And Uranus is that shocking, unexpected, like earthquake level upsets. And that could be a war. We talked about, well, everyone's talked about this, but that whenever Uranus is in Gemini for the US, there's a major war. Or whenever Uranus is in Gemini for the world, I shouldn't just say for the US, but like our Civil War, World War II, the Revolutionary War, these were all when Uranus entered Gemini, and that is happening again this July.
Yeah.
We're just ahead of schedule.
Yes.
Ugh. Yeah. But it's interesting to think about what brought it ahead of schedule could have been that midpoint between the Aries conjunction and this Mercury station. Sextiling it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love Camille saying living in the US is like being in a toxic relationship. I think it's time to break up. Yeah. That's such a good point. And with traveling too, Camille flying out of the country in a few days. I went to Greece last year, and I remember being there, and just the energy felt so much lighter and just like easier. And even flying back into the US as we were coming in over Canada, you could feel the crisis energy starting to rise up. It was like, oh, we're like literally going back to like a really depressed energy over here in the US. So yeah, definitely toxic stuff going on. And maybe this will be an opportunity for a lot of our citizens to apply this retrograde opportunity to how we are thinking about who are we in the United States? What does it mean to be a US citizen? What does it mean to use our voice as a US citizen?
Also, and it's like remembering, or they can be reminders, right? Like just remembering the last time we were like in a war. And just, or remembering like just this recycle or this repeating situation. It's not, I mean, what would be the shadow of a Mercury retrograde in Pisces period?
Mistaking any deluded epiphanies, I guess, like moments of, this is so clear to me right now, I have to go through with this then. Yeah,
exactly. Because I do think Mercury retrograde is typically a time of reflection. And I know, like, I've had several clients recently who it's like, I can see that they usually get these signs, but I'm like, because of that Pisces in Mercury retrograde, I was like, normally I wouldn't necessarily say you might not have signs, but I would say don't fully act quickly on this sign in this moment, because we don't know, like Pisces can sometimes present illusions.
And especially with Mercury being retrograding on top of that, it's like fogginess on top of fogginess.
Right. It's like not every, like it could still mean something, but it doesn't necessarily mean what you think potentially. It's just being open to how is this energy going to express itself.
Definitely. I'm just taking a peek at the US chart to see if Mercury retrograded on anything specific to our chart. Oh my gosh. Can I?
Are you going to share screen? Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good.
It's going to be crazy. All right, let's do this.
Of course, I just looked. Oh my goodness. Of course, it's in that house.
Of course. Also, I'm not sharing my screen appropriately. Sorry. Here we go. I can do this. No, like I like
retrograde, everybody. Like,
there we go. I made it work. Last week when we tried it for the first time, it bada bing, it worked. But this week, no.
Mm-hmm.
So what I immediately looked at was this is the moment that Mercury retrograded. We don't have to look at the angles as far as like where the ascendant claims it isn't. Well, I guess we could, but Mercury is right here. This is the station at 22 degrees 33 minutes, and what is directly across from the US's is the US's Neptune in the exact opposite sign, just a mere 8 minutes of orb difference. That's exact. That's considered an exact
Yep.
opposition. And Neptune is the psychological modern ruler of Pisces. Like there is a lot. Yeah. Okay.
And I mean, and the ninth house can have to do with war.
I wasn't even going there yet, but yeah, you're right. And it's interesting. I know that the node is far away, but it's still in the same sign. So it's almost still saying, like, what do you need to let go of as far as habits are concerned around this Virgo Neptune? The delusion around war, the delusion around how we can be the analytical presence, the Virgoan presence within war. Like, no, we can't. Like, we've seen that time and time again. We aren't, the all-powerful, all-knowing United States of America. We are
It's like, yeah, it's like kind of getting really confused about what are we fighting for, or really like attached to that we are fighting for the right thing.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that, so natally we have Neptune here, and it's squaring our Mars. And so with this setup, we're creating a T-square here to our Mars. So it's like rethinking, reevaluating what we're going to do in opposition. So we're trying to integrate these energies together with our diluted thinking around war. And as we get this engine going, even in a lower expression, it blasts into this Mars. Yeah. This Mars is about the courage to Gemini. This is another sign that's ruled by Mercury, just like Virgo. I didn't mention that before, but this is a highly mercurial Mercury retrograde, people. Mm-hmm. But it's blasting into the duality sign of Gemini in the house of partnership. It's like we went to war with a partner in mind. We're talking.
Yeah. And because that's why we're talking about, it's blasting into Mars because it's forming that T-square triangle, and Mars is the peak of it. Mm-hmm. And it's just interesting with Mars being in the 7th house, and 7th house can be open enemies, and just Mercury squaring the Mars. It's interesting because it's like we can be there's an opportunity to redo or to replay. And what are we doing? Maybe it's too soon to tell. Maybe we all have our own ideas of which direction we're going, but I think like that's a great way to kind of look at retrograde as an opportunity, but it's also there's like some risk there of like kind of replaying things that have happened in the past.
Yeah, definitely. And looking at some of these other aspects that are being made that are just present in this chart, these are energies that some of them are very slow moving, so they're present, they're creating themes over time. But the United States is in a Chiron return. It hit all of its points of exactitude, but it's very much in a Chiron return at this time. And Chiron in the sky is conjunct Ceres, which is about abandonment, which is about like the severance and coming back together. Reuniting is sometimes a positive word for it. And what's happening in the sky, but the North Node is also on our natal Ceres. So once again, we see this thematic like cluster kind of building around the woundedness of Chiron, wanting to heal those Chiron wounds, wanting to heal our wounds about home, about belonging, about perhaps like our place in the world. Like we want to be number one, blah, blah, blah. Maybe that's part of this, and thinking we need to go to war to enforce that.
What's interesting too, I think Brittany and I were talking about this earlier, but it's like thinking about like right now this war started and then people are trapped in Dubai. And just I'm thinking about that with that 9th house Neptune of just, you're across in another country, you can't get home. And I'm curious how it's going to continue to play out during the Mercury retrograde season.
Yeah.
But considering like the connection to travel as well.
It's so interesting to think about that too, as like the abandonment of our citizens. Like,
yeah, I mean, seriously. Yes, exactly.
Wow.
Of it's like, and it kind of is putting this pressure on this Mars of like, so we're defending but also are we protecting?
Mm.
And like, yeah, so it's like almost like there's this tension between what does defending mean if we're not protecting citizens.
Yeah. And then for this event chart, so this is Mars has since moved into Pisces. But for this event chart for the retrograde station, Mars was also on top of the United States moon.
Mm-hmm.
So much
Yeah.
going on here, like asking us, what do you actually care about? Do you care about your citizens? Do you care about your countries that are allies to you? Do you care about power?
I could talk about this all day long, and I think we should zoom back out because then I'm about to talk about Uranus squaring the moon as well. Like, let me get out of here.
Yes, let's do
Yeah.
that. Talk about something different. We don't want to be overly sad about this episode. Oh, I put the wrong thing.
Yeah.
There we go.
Now, I've also seen that, like, let's go to kind of if you're born with a planet in retrograde. I have two planets that were retrograde when I was born, Mars and Jupiter. Jenna, you have a bunch.
I have 6.
Which is considered, if you have like 0 to maybe 1, that's seen as something we would be interested in. And then if you have more than 3 or 4, then that would also be. But 1 or 2 is typically common for you to have, especially if we're counting the sun and moon do not go retrograde, but all the other planets do. So my question is we kind of overblame or overhype retrogrades as a society. So then people are like, oh no, I have this planet that's retrograde, but there can be some strengths to it. Like I said earlier, it just might function in a different way, or it might function more internally, or it has this like, there's a deep rooted strength to it. Do you want to add anything there, Jenna?
I think too, the whole evolutionary astrology lens of your chart is perfect for the work that you have to do. I know for me, having 6 planets retrograde natally, it was basically like emphasizing the fact that I was going to be a late bloomer and I needed to pause and have a lot of experiences happen to me before I could actually accumulate and start to make sense of them. So it put the pause on my processing in a lot of ways, which is hilarious because I also have a processing disorder. So it's like it's coming out in any way that it can, that energy will find a way to express itself. But it is a tool that's actually useful because it was telling me, don't waste your energy just yet. The vision will become clear.
Yeah. And I do think I agree with that. And I feel like just my Jupiter is retrograde, and Jupiter can be faith. And it's like there's this I do have a deep rooted faith, even in like bleak times, that it will work out, or like things are going to be okay. And really thinking about how it connects to the story of your chart of like why. In evolutionary astrology, we like to ask, why do I have this? So why would I need my Jupiter to give me this deeply rooted sense of faith? With a Taurus moon, I can tell you a little bit why that would be helpful. Or if you have a retrograde Saturn, that you can have like you deeply self-sufficient, or you have this discipline, or this ability to stand on your own, or like this ability to be in solitude. Thinking about why would that be beneficial for you?
Mm-hmm. Especially the soul work that you're here to do, or any hangups that you have around being with others. Like maybe it's taking out some level of stressor so you can focus more. There's lots of ways this can play out. Camille's asking, how do we know if we have planets natally retrograde? There's a few ways, but go ahead.
Yeah. Do you want to share?
Well, so the first thing that I can say is a lot of people talk about ephemerises. And when you're reading the Swiss ephemeris, if you look to the day that you were born, granted, it does change during the day for some of these for the exact moment. But in the ephemeris, you'll see that if it has a gray background, that means that planet is retrograde. If you go on astro.com and you type in your information, you can get a free account and save up to 100 charts for free on astro.com and do all sorts of intricate things with it. But on astro.com, it shows the planet's degrees in red lettering to signify this is a retrograde planet.
Yes.
There's a couple other ways too, but those are the...
Yeah, and Camille, I have your chart, so if you feel comfortable with me sharing it, I could just tell you which ones you have on here, but I don't want to say it without your consent. But can we... Actually, wait, do we want to talk anything more about retrograde in your natal chart? I think... Wait, you go.
I just want to emphasize that, like, don't demonize it, because
Yes.
as someone with 6 of them, it's easy to demonize it and be like, oh no, poor me. But really, again, the work that you're here to do, your evolutionary goals and intentions in this lifetime, want those retrograde moments. Just like everyone who's alive on Earth right now signed up for this retrograde moment by transit. Like, we all have something to benefit from Mercury's retrograde in Pisces. It's about whether we stand up to that opportunity and seize it.
Camille, you have Uranus, Saturn, and Neptune all together and retrograde, which kind of brings me to my next point that I had for you, Jenna, is just, I like what you're saying about we signed up to go through these seasons and also for the chart we have. Now, we talk about the personal planet retrogrades differently. And so if Camille has, those are 3 outer planets that are retrograde. Do you feel like people feel the Venus or Mercury, if they have those natally in retrograde, differently than they do the outer planets? Because since the outer planets, they move so slow, and the reason I'm saying this, everyone, is because those are considered generational planets. So anyone who was born within 3 months or more, depending on how long it is, may also have at least a couple of those planets retrograde. And so it's not just something that's happening to you, but Mercury retrograde is like 3 weeks long, or Venus is 40 days. So it's like much more rarer to kind of have that.
Yeah, and Venus retrogrades super rarely. So many people will not have that, whereas Mercury is a little bit more common. So
Yeah.
I do not have a Venus retrograde, so I'm not that special. However, Mercury, yes. So I really like this question because it brings in the whole idea of like generational themes. Like, we can talk about how in the early to mid 90s, there's a whole group of young millennials, not elder millennials, young millennials that were born with Uranus and Neptune conjunct. And it's like, there's a very specific reason that humanity, that the stars, God, spirit, however you want to frame it, called these children to be born at that time, called these souls to be born under that specific energy, because as a group, they are collectively tasked with, even in some subtle ways, bringing forth this energy of that fusion. Right. So it's similar, like Camille is part of a group that is tasked with bringing forth the energy of what does it mean to have Uranus retrograde? What does it mean to also, on top of that, have Neptune retrograde? And was it Saturn was the last one?
Yes.
And then on top of that, Saturn. So we're talking about the function of individuation, of authentic individuation, coupled with that determination. It's almost like saying, like, this is going to be an internal development. This is going to be a blossoming that has that Neptunian spiritual component to it as you do this work to get in touch with your authentic self. That work happens on the inside, and you, Camille, and those that were born within your year, or probably about 3 years, will come out with this and actually bring it into the world in a way that first had to be born on the inside of yourself.
Now, this is something that I would like everyone to think about. Progressions, you'll definitely need to either look this up or connect with your personal astrologer, is when progressions are for every day of the first 90 days of your life, they translate to a year. Now, if you do not have any of your personal planets retrograde, I'd be interesting to look and see, do you have any planets that turned retrograde or stationed direct in the first 90 days of your life? Because then those will be really powerful years in your life as well. Do you kind of want me to go more into that, Jenna?
Sure, yeah.
So for example, I'm going to stay with Camille's chart. So while Camille was not born with a Mercury retrograde, her Mercury went retrograde by progression. And so progression is to do with like how you're evolving internally. And so it's her evolving voice, her evolving perception, how she's thinking about things, how she sees the world is now shifting inward. That was first went retrograde when she was 6 in 1997. I shouldn't have said that. Ignore that. And then it turned direct at 29. So thinking about, I don't know what's going on in Camille's life at that point, but thinking about what was going on, like what was this internal thinking period that she was having, and like how her voice was shifting and changing, that then at that point in her life when it turned direct, there's typically a shift in how you're moving through life, the decisions you're now going to make because of that time that you had. So I'm curious what Camille's thinking about that. But Jenna, what are you thinking?
Well, immediately when you said 6, I was like, okay, so something foundational was going on up until the age of 6 that she was witnessing that was happening outside of herself. Then at age 6, there's something that pivoted where this information, these experiences, this external reality was brought inward. And age 29, that's Saturn's return. There's something within these first 6 years that was building something that her identity was going to be deeply informed by. Camille, you'll have to say if that is accurate or not.
Yeah.
Or don't if you aren't comfortable with it.
You don't have to.
Yeah, no pressure. But the fact that Camille also has Saturn natally retrograde, it just makes me think like there's definitely something going on that Saturn is like, hey, we got to pay attention. And in addition to that, I'm working with Mercury over here for this first Saturn cycle, this first 30 years of life.
Yes. And that's like, I think with progressions, they're very different from transits in that they have to do with internal development and people, you feel them on a deep level. You might see shifts, but it doesn't always translate to external events. It might just be much more personal in how you're growing. I think for me, my Mercury stationed retrograde, my progressed Mercury in 2019, after I was like recently engaged, and then that later that marriage did not work out. And so, but it was definitely like kind of reflecting on what do I want to be true in relationships or like, you know, self-worth. It had just turned retrograde right before it was going to be hitting my Venus. And so very interesting. It's like where I love what Jenna was saying earlier about you get the chart, you get the progressions that your soul signed up for. And so it's not a way to say, oh no, my Mercury stationing retrograde before it touches this Venus, I'm not going to meet my partner or something. That's not how it works. There's like my soul needed that. There's this opportunity to kind of like reflect on what is my personal power actually rooted in and connected to. And it's going to stay retrograde for a while. Yes.
I love that. The my soul needed that kind of redirection, that pause. Cause like when you map it out for all of us, it can almost feel like these are moments when the universe is like, okay, we're bowling, but we're putting the bumpers up right now. And we're going to really focus on like, without all this other noise going on, what are we really here to do? So it's like the retrograde is like bumpers up. Let's reflect. Let's take the information.
And because progressions are so much slower because it's a day per year, it does not necessarily like people still publish books when their progressed Mercury is retrograde, or it's like people will see Venus, the planet of love, turning retrograde, and they're like, oh, I'm not going to find love. And if that like that's not necessarily how to view these things. It's more about the way you're expressing the planet is going to be different. I know that my Venus is stationing, and it's really like I still love having friends, but I have the way what I value in friendship is shifting. It's like almost like pulling and pausing. And so do I have less friends? Maybe, but is the quality has changed. And so really just being open to, I don't like the fear mongering or like pop astrology where we're like, we know one thing that a planet stands for, and then we're worried about, oh no, that means I'm going to be frozen in time or not going to be able to do something. It's more about how are you responding to the invitation of the retrograde and doing that work and like really seeing like flowing with it. And I feel like when you resist it, then you're more likely to kind of run into some issues and challenges.
Yeah, I like that a lot. How are you responding to the invitation of the retrograde? Yeah.
I love what Camille said 29 was a transcendental year and that she made decisions that her family and most of society didn't understand, but she followed her internal voice and has no regrets. And what I love about this is that so your voice was you're making the decision externally and having that time like from childhood into early adulthood to really think of and like kind of gaining this time where maybe you were more observant and just like picking up all of these things was just part of your soul's journey. And it's like I just love looking at progressions where they turn direct or retrograde because it really does line up with now you're ready to act or speak on it.
I like that it almost feels like that progressed retrograde was being informed by her natal retrograde planets too. And the fact that she was saying she's making decisions others don't understand, that feels so much like Uranus retrograde. Like I have to get the answers from within me, my authenticity.
No, I love that.
Great job, Camille. You nailed it. That's awesome. So my Mercury is natally retrograde and moving really slowly because it was about to station direct. So it was slowing down perception wise and almost about to station, but 3 days after I was born is when it stationed and started moving in direct motion again, which means at 3 years old, my Mercury by progression stationed and started moving direct. So I had really bad ear infections all through childhood and had like tubes in my ears and surgeries and stuff like that. And they took them out when I was 3. And until that point, I was nonverbal because I couldn't really hear. It sounded like everything was underwater. So I just point at things. And at this point, I started being able to hear. So I was able to start talking. So it's interesting to think of a retrograde Mercury as being represented by, I'm really not trying to blame Mercury, it's just the symbolism of not speaking and also not hearing. My communication methods were blocked. We're forced to be internal, not external.
Yeah. And you're kind of making me think, so you're a Leo and like you do express yourself, and I'm curious what other professional astrologers think. I like to kind of look at the progressions, even if we're not covering that in a natal reading, because, if someone's Venus is direct, but then it's been retrograde by progression their entire life, that does layer into how they resonate with their Venus. And if I'm only kind of considering it as a direct Venus, then I'm not going to really be doing justice to that person. It's like, if I'm looking at just your natal chart, Jenna, then I'm just seeing that retrograde Mercury, and then I meet you. It's like, it's like you might come in. And so I really think it's interesting to kind of look at, even if you don't need to tie in the progressions, but just having that lens of, oh wait, and her Mercury stationed direct at 3. So that kind of adds in of like, your voice has evolved to this direct like expression, or it has evolved to a retrograde expression, and kind of pulling that in to the way you're interpreting someone's natal chart or your own.
Yeah, for sure. And looking at we talk about the ingresses into new signs by progression, but also when you have a planet retrograding or turning retrograde or turning direct, it basically implies there's going to be a lot of time spent in that sign. So for me, for instance, my natal Venus is in Virgo, and it was direct. So it's already progressed through the rest of Virgo and all of Libra, and it's newly in Scorpio now by progression. And I'm 39. And it's never leaving Scorpio. I will not live long enough for it to leave Scorpio. This is because it's going to retrograde when I'm in my 70s, and it's going to slow and stop and then start perceiving movement backwards. So I will be Venus in Scorpio for the rest of my days. However, right now I'm just a baby Venus in Scorpio. So if someone was to talk to me about my experiences of being a Venus in Virgo, and I was sitting in a reading right now, they might also want to touch on that evolving experience of Venus in Libra and what that brought about too, because that chapter of my life is also over.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to ask you an astrologer to astrologer question, since we only have like a few minutes. What advice, or not advice, what would you want to be true for someone? Like, what should they be doing to be successful during a retrograde period?
Pausing. That's my immediate answer for that. And that comes from the fact that my chart is very fire heavy. So I'm a go, go, go type person. Mm-hmm. This is a time when the universe is saying, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it doesn't feel, second nature to you, even if your whole focus is on the fact that you're trying to slow down, like you don't even get to the thinking about it more. This is about pausing. This is about practicing how to pause, practicing how to not immediately respond or reply. What does it look like to rethink something? Maybe there's ways for, all of us to entertain new ways of rethinking. Like, have you ever really tried to see it from this point of view? Well, now's the perfect time to try.
I have 2 comments there. I think one, remembering pausing does not mean do nothing. It's just there a lot can be going on internally, especially with Mercury. It's like we're thinking, maybe we're not making decisions. We're open to new ideas or new perspectives. It's just I think pause does not mean tune out or like not doing anything. It's just that the doing doesn't necessarily look active.
Mm-hmm.
Because I do think it's like then when it's direct, you'll have spent some time. It makes me kind of think of like a maybe it's the Pisces energy in Mercury, but it makes me think of like a Neptunian transit a little bit, where
Mm-hmm.
it's like you're just open to receiving this vision. But I also want to kind of push back on what like pause, but life doesn't pause for a retrograde. So what if someone's in a point where they can't pause?
Mm. I would say if you are at a point where you can't pause, make as much space as is possible. And if that, even if that's only a tiny bit, maybe it's nothing. And in that case, it's like, you know what, you did the best you could. And there's just something going on where this pause that the retrograde is asking us to make room for as much as possible, it isn't possible. So now it turns into moving through this without fear, moving through what we cannot control without fear. And I'm sure that, you know, it's Mercury retrograde. There's going to be delays. There's going to be issues that come up. If there isn't, that's wonderful. Congratulations. But most people are going to experience some level of delay. And within that imposed upon pause, maybe you weren't in control of the pause. In that moment, perfect time to exercise surrender.
Mm-hmm. Yes, like don't panic because like life happens. And I don't like how retrogrades are kind of demonized or just like, or you're not supposed to live. It's like we literally don't, especially with the slower moving planets, we don't have that luxury of being able to do that.
Yeah. And
Or just like I've seen friends who are having babies getting stressed of like, oh no, my baby's gonna, I was like, you gotta have a baby. Like just you
there's
can't
no
hold
perfect
it.
day. Yeah.
Right.
They're all
Like,
perfect.
they're ready to come and do this.
Exactly. And their chart will be perfect for the work that they're here to do, just like you as their parent is perfect for the work that they're here to do. It all, like, we are just little tiny humans that don't really understand what is going on, like, out there in the world. As much as astrology is like we're looking behind the veil, we're looking behind the curtain. I wanted to bring this up, and I wasn't planning to bring it up today, but just the fact that astrology in general, it almost feels like a cheat code. It's like it's okay for us to lean in and see what the astrology is asking for. It's okay
Yeah.
for us to lean on it and also say to ourselves, like, look, like my phone needed an update the other day and it told me it was going to take 9 hours. And you know what? I knew that Mercury just stationed and it was, you know, on me. I delayed the update as long as possible, not even thinking about the retrogrades. And that was the moment of pause. It was like, guess what, Jenna? You're not on your phone today because it's going to sit here plugged in for 9 hours. It updated and everything was fine, but I still had the Mercury retrograde pause in the moment.
Yes. It's like take a breath.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like when we're prepared for that, it can almost feel like, am I still having a human experience because I'm acutely aware of things that are not part of this necessarily this human experience? But I had heard at the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gym, somebody said, if you're not cheating, then you're not trying. And they meant it in relation to board games. And I was
okay. The competitive person.
but they were like, yeah, I cheated every board game. This is an adult. Like I cheated every board game. I got to win because if you're not cheating, you're not trying. And I was like, that is, first of all, not how I feel about board games. I am not into that. However, it helped me understand. I applied it to astrology and I was like, it's okay that we're looking at transits. It's okay that we understand Mercury retrograde. If we aren't rationalizing, it's almost like we're cheating a little bit. Like we're looking at sources code saying like, oh, we know exactly what we're supposed to do now. Pause. So then, you know, when something comes up, like my phone taking 9 hours to update, I'm not just like, the world is against me. You know, it can help us calm down.
That's just making me think of like I wish I could remember the astrologer that said this. I apologize. But they were like that the planets don't compel us, they impel us, which it's like so they motivate or encourage us. They invite us to work with their energies. And they don't force us to do things. They're not happening. Like I don't like viewing life as like it's happening to us and that this is like we can't do anything. But I do like to think like these are things that are kind of within us. To kind of view it the same way as I view tarot of like it's a tool, but it's like, you know, we say as above, so below, but it can also be as below, so above of I've reached this point in my journey where I'm ready to pause. I'm ready to think about this from a different angle. And so synchronicity, I'm like, the planets are kind of providing this retrograde opportunity, or by progression or anything, where I get even like a little extra boost to do that. Or I'm, even if I don't know, if I'm not aware or cognizant that I'm ready for it, I am. And so now there's this opportunity. But
Mhm.
I don't know.
I like that a lot. I saw that quote recently
I
too.
know. I'm like, let me just see if I can type it in and it'll tell me.
I'm like, was it you that said it to
No,
me?
I don't think I
No.
did.
It must be making its rounds on social
Does
media.
anyone have any questions in the chat before we like wrap up? Um,
Or how are your retrogrades going, guys?
how do you feel this Mercury retrograde?
How are you feeling it? Yeah, it's been intense. I feel like I always say that though. It's been intense.
Can't find it.
Can't find it.
Mhm.
Oh shucks. Oh
Yeah.
well. The one thing that can be a little tricky right now is we're also in an eclipse portal.
Yes.
Yeah. So we don't want to blame everything on Mercury. We also want to blame the moon. No, just kidding.
Yeah. And I mean, but yes, because eclipses are also powerful and confusing times as well. And yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's just it's so interesting that it's like Mercury is retrograding within the sign of the North Node, but we could say with the North Node because they're both in Pisces, while Mercury rules the South Node in Virgo. So it's like Mercury retrograde is like more than best supporting actor right now. It's like a
Yeah.
secret director.
And there's like that emphasis on the Pisces energy is definitely, there's a reason for it. I like that Jill said great. And I like what you were saying earlier, Jenna, of around like life goes on. Like, it's not that we can just pause, because Jill shared earlier that she started a new job.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like a balance. And so I just really like that. And if you I really think about where your natal Mercury is, does like bring a lot into that conversation as well.
Mm-hmm, for sure. And sometimes, honestly, like I'm going to go ahead and say Mercury retrograde is actually a huge gift. Maybe this is my natal Mercury retrograde, but I was feeling like I needed to be out about all this trauma stuff and like write a book and like dive into this. And then Mercury stationed retrograde and first of all, there was a delay in the place I was initially supposed to speak about it. Like there was all this stuff. And I was like, astrology would have me noting, or at least spirituality would have me noticing this delay that happened before the retrograde in the shadow. But maybe there's something to it. And the minute that Mercury stationed, I was like, oh, I don't think I actually need to do all this publicly. So it was almost like Mercury retrograde was saying, hey, now the reflection time is going to give you clarity. Sitting with this has more of a gift right now, because sitting with perception is what Mercury retrograde wants.
Yep. And that's because Jill's Mercury natally is in Pisces.
Oh,
but it's direct. And so I'm like, so that really connects of just.
Yeah, saying that it's going in a positive direction for Jill. Yeah. Even though, which is opposite of normal.
Oh, Jill.
Oh, good. You're back in the gym. You have a new job. Wow. Oh, ignoring my talk.
That's awesome.
That is really good. Good for you, Jill. Congratulations. I feel Neptune in there too. Neptune and Aries.
And Camille saying Mercury retrograde's been intense for her. Some old wounds were triggered and illuminated because of external things. Definitely thinking through like what house is Mercury traveling through for you will also, I mean, when you're looking at retrogrades before they start, can give you an idea of what potential themes might be coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I remember one time I had Mercury retrograde in my 7th house, and I was just joking about, oh, if people reach out from my past, but I had a lot of people reach out from my past in that moment, but I didn't read into it very much. I'm like, that makes sense. It doesn't mean you're supposed to be with this person, but I'm always like, oh, I wonder what's going on. Which house is it traveling through?
Yeah, if everyone who's thinking about dating their exes at this current moment could wait until Mercury is direct again.
That's one thing.
You will thank yourself.
Venus retrograde, Mercury retrograde. I'm like, you can think about it. I would just see if you feel that way when it's direct.
Yeah, and remember with Mercury retrograde, there's no urgency around action, so it's okay to wait.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to talk about next week?
Yes. So we normally announce what type of episode we're going to have the next week, but Jen and I decided to wait until after the eclipse, and that is happening this week. And because I have one brain cell during Mercury retrograde, and we're just couldn't decide what we want to talk about. If you have any ideas, please suggest them. But otherwise, we're trying to figure out what our theme is going to be in the month of March.
Yeah, we're going to have a whole new look on life after tomorrow's eclipse. We all will. So we don't want to hold them down. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. It's 4:00 now. So until next week.
Thanks everyone for engaging with us.
Yeah, we appreciate all the comments in the chat. You guys are great fans.
Bye.